Do the human characters and the story matter in a kaiju film? Every good monster movie has some wild carnage and chaos caused by gigantic beasts. After all, the reason we go to see these movies is for the monsters and the action, right? Does the story even matter? The newly released Godzilla vs. Kong, A New Empire, is experiencing the common critique that most kaiju films get. That the monster stuff is fun, but the plot isn't very good, and that the human characters are dull and uninteresting. This is typical for the genre. The non-monster sequences are often the weak point of kaiju movies. Some might argue that the humans are, at best, a necessary evil for these films, and, at worst, an anchor that drags the whole movie down. But is this really the case? While it's true that the main draw of a kaiju film is obviously the kaiju, can't a good story and characters make the film better? Historically, most people respond to a good story. Every civilization since the beginning of the human race has employed some sort of storytelling. When we become engaged in an entertaining story, we get swept away, transported to another time or place. We forget our problems and we become deeply immersed in a world of someone else's making. Stories can connect us, especially if we sympathize with the people of the story. The human aspects of a monster movie are generally seen as a bonus rather than a necessity. After all, the original King Kong vs. Godzilla from 1962 was entertaining, despite being a campy, silly film with one-dimensional characters and a paper-thin plot. But regardless, isn't it advantageous when filmmakers can mix well-written human stories with monster mayhem? Much of the classic 1933 King Kong focused on charismatic movie director Carl Denham, played by the scene-stealing Robert Armstrong. Denham is a complex character, alternately both a good guy and a villain, whose reckless nature incites the danger to follow. His obsessive determination to capture and exploit Kong leads to disaster and death. Ann Darrow, played by the lovely Fay Wray, is the central focus of Kong's attention and the heart of the movie. Beyond the human characters, the film has a strong message about obsession, animal rights, beauty, religion, and colonialism. 1954's Gojira, the first ever Godzilla movie, centered on an ethical dilemma by Dr. Serizawa, well played by Akihiko Hirata. Serizawa has created the oxygen destroyer, which could become a weapon of mass destruction in the wrong hands, and so wants to keep it a secret. When he learns that revealing the existence of his invention is the only hope of destroying Godzilla, he must make a monumental decision that affects the future of the whole world. Serizawa ultimately sacrifices his own life for the greater good. The film is also a metaphor about the danger from the uncontrolled power of atomic weapons. Shin Godzilla, from 2016, was a clever satire of bumbling government bureaucracy. It parodies the government's complex red tape and their inability to deal with a crisis in any kind of efficient way, pointing out that those in authority use the hierarchical system to protect their positions at the expense of the public. It is also a metaphor regarding the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. Last year's excellent Godzilla -1 worked as a compelling drama featuring likable, three-dimensional characters. The humans must not only deal with Godzilla, but with the poverty and devastation of post-World War II Japan. The film touched on relatable themes such as guilt, trauma, family, war, loss, and redemption. Possibly more than any other Godzilla film, it blended human drama with kaiju rampages. The juxtaposition of the realistic drama made Godzilla seem all the more frightening. Of course, there are some entertaining non-Kong or Godzilla films that have compelling, relatable human characters, such as Gamera, Guardian of the Universe from 1995, and Cloverfield from 2008. Some of the best ever kaiju films in the history of the genre have done an excellent job of mixing a good story about interesting, engrossing people, paralleled with the city-smashing adventures of a giant, powerful creature. And while a good kaiju movie can still be very entertaining by skimping on the script, it ups its game by giving us something a little deeper and more meaningful.